Hi, I'm Jack Howell. This video is intended to fill a gap in my group of fundamental technique videos. I talk about breathing a lot and in lessons and in various other videos, but I haven't made a specific breathing video per se, so here it is. Most breathing instruction starts off with talking about breath support, breathing deeply by letting the diaphragm drop, and then supporting from the diaphragm, and that is all very well and good. But I believe that the problem of shallow breathing is usually a symptom of a musical and rhythmic problem that prevents us from taking the deep, natural breaths that we actually know how to take. Here's what I mean. Now, I may be exaggerating a little, but in many cases I'm not exaggerating at all. Now, what are the chances that any of those are going to be good breaths? A colleague calls what I'm talking about student breaths. So it's not just me. This sort of breathing reveals a sense of rhythm that is fundamentally flawed. The note after the eighth rest is played as a reaction to the rest and not as a pickup to the next beat, like this. Okay, how often do we hear that? So it's very difficult to play with someone who feels the rhythm by reacting to what has happened rather than by anticipating what is going to happen, because they aren't swimming with the other fish. They're chronically late on entrances, and they're continually vacillating between too fast and slow because they are reacting, not anticipating. These players rely heavily on subdivision, on adding additional events within the bar to which they react, which makes sense to them since a smaller increment should result in a smaller error. But as I say over and over, precision and emphasis are entirely different things. When you take someone's pulse, you use these fingertips, not the thumb, because the thumb has a pulse, which obscures your ability to feel the other person's pulse. The more emphases a player installs trying to play rhythmically, the more unintended accents they play and the less able they are to feel the ensemble pulse. When a player breathes like this, their entrances will usually be late, unless the whole ensemble plays like this, but professional orchestras generally don't. Most players who breathe like this, usually they display bad rhythm in other ways, but some highly skilled student breathers have figured out how to sound like they are playing rhythmically when playing alone. But because they aren't really playing with strong ensemble rhythm, they have just gotten really good at reacting, in the section they will be disruptive. So if you breathe like this and you audition for the Pittsburgh Symphony, it doesn't matter how beautiful your tone is. It doesn't matter how great your fingers and articulation are. I am telling you this with peace and love. I will not vote for you. It's my personal third rail because I have learned the hard way. Now, many students are taught to breathe this way by frustrated band directors as an antidote to playing in rests. It stands to reason you can't make sound while you are inhaling, so if you inhale on every rest, you won't play in them. So we wind up with those offbeats that I showed you at the beginning. But now, do you see how this destroys any chance of a relaxed, full, truly rhythmic breath? And playing from a set embouchure and airstream, if our objective is a full, deep breath, do you see how little sense it makes to try to take a breath in the space of an 8th or a 16th rest rather than in the relative eternity that precedes it? So here's what I would prefer. Okay, no emphasis on the rest. The melody flows to where it should go. And another thing, in my view, we should always strive to conceal the scaffolding from the audience. The audience should forget that they're listening to a wind instrument. And there's another fundamental flaw that often goes hand in hand with the 16th note breath. Because playing is a reaction, almost a startle response to the breath, the player abandons the embouchure during inhalation and then tries to reestablish it just as the air arrives. sort of a collapsing on the attack, often with jaw pressure, which frequently results in a squeak. See how my embouchure is open and then suddenly grabbed to make the attack. Now, this works for the accordion, doesn't work for the clarinet. What should you do instead? You should breathe, set, produce the tone. Always produce the tone from a set, not as a, I don't know what you call it. But do you remember that center of the stake drill from The Wisdom of Trevor Y? The whole point of the center of the stake drill is to find the point where the dolce tone is poised. With the embouchure in the tongue position, the tone is ready to speak, you energize it, and then your tone appears with intention. The alternative that I showed you is where you just kind of blow and wait and see what happens. The set part of the breathe, set sequence, breathe, set, produce sequence, is when we put everything, the airstream focus, the oral cavity, the embouchure, where it needs to be for our most beautiful tone. Then we energize it with air and musical intention. The other way, the snatch breath, then collapse on the attack of the air and the embouchure and the jaw pressure, all trying to arrive at the same time to produce an intended musical result. That's trying to hit a moving object with a moving object, which is not impossible. Clay target shooters are really good at it, as are some clarinetists. But given the choice between creating the best clarinet playing mechanism possible and, on one hand, on the other, trying to make a flawed mechanism work as well as it can, I think the former makes more sense. So as long as I can remember, I've been teaching this breathe, set, produce, that one should set the embouchure in the air and then produce the tone on time with focus. But I was missing something, and I needed to back the process up one more step. And I owe my colleague Victoria Luperi for setting me straight. We were listening to CMU entrance auditions, and after one candidate played, Victoria said, "I can't believe students aren't taught to breathe out of the corners of their mouth." Well, yeah, of course. Why breathe and set your embouchure when you can set your embouchure then breathe? And when you take a breath in the middle of a phrase, why let your embouchure dissolve entirely, then reassemble it? Why not leave it as intact as possible? Now, the more I thought about it, the more sense it made, and the more connection I saw to this biting attack issue. Like an equal and an opposite reaction, when the jaw opens to breathe, it bites to play. And this is one of those things that I never taught because I never had to learn it myself. As it turns out, when I breathe, my top teeth stay in contact with the mouthpiece, my bottom teeth and lips stay connected to the reed. Nobody taught me to do that, I just did it. And by extension, I guess I figured everybody else did. Whoopsie. The engineering principle at work, I think, is the one, degrees of freedom. The more planes in which an object can move, the more degrees of freedom and the more possibility for error. So engineers making a mechanism strive to reduce degrees of freedom, and so should we. I think you see the point. When you breathe, leaving your embouchure 50 to 75% intact is better than 0% intact. So, as I say now, breathe through east and west, leave north and south set. And that reduces the number of things that can go wrong. And now we talk about breathing deeply, as Marcel Tabuteau said, into the stomach. Tabuteau's saying was, no tummy, no tone. And I would be the last to argue against the importance of good breathing mechanics. I think I improved my playing a lot in college by working specifically on breathing. And my teacher, Bill Jackson, actually took lessons with Beverly Sills on breathing. And I noted and I modeled how his circumference increased when he took a breath. Good breathing mechanics are very, very important. But you can't put those mechanics to use if you breathe at the wrong time and for the wrong rhythm. If you snatch a counting breath right before you play, you will not employ the good breathing mechanics you have had since birth. You will take tense, shallow breaths, and trying to deepen a tense, shallow, unmusical snatch breath is a fool's errand. Learn to take deep, natural breaths whenever possible, and you will find that it usually is. Sometimes, of course, we must take breaths in very little time. And yes, there is a technique and athleticism to filling your lungs as quickly and as unobtrusively as possible. But breathing on every rest in order to count does not teach this. So, once again, I prefer this. To this. If I play it the second way, all the breathing mechanics in the world are wasted. As a teacher, I will die on this hill. If you learn nothing else from me, don't breathe on the short rest, breathe in the relative eternity that precedes it. Then you have a chance of taking that deep, diaphragm-dropping breath everyone talks about. Thanks for watching.